Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream. There's lots to talk about as ever. I am going to spend the hour with your good selves, so do make lots of comments. I'll be able to interact with those a lot. We don't have anyone else joining us this week. We will for next week and the weeks after, but it's just me for this week, I say, but there's lots to talk about. So where do I start? Well, we've had a trip up to Orkney and the far north and Thurso. A few tales to tell from that. We'll save those for a minute. Oh, well, a question already from Bruce. Will the Scottish Family Party be calling for a ceasefire in Gaza? Maybe they already have. I'm unsure. And the answer to that is no, we won't be calling for a ceasefire in Gaza for two reasons. Partly because we generally don't make comments on foreign policy matters. It's not something that we focus on. My personal view as well, calling for a ceasefire. Now, if you call for a ceasefire in a war, then that favors one side or another, doesn't it? So let's say when Russia invaded Ukraine. So let's say Russia was at the point, remember when it was very close to Kiev? It was looking like it was going to actually surround and capture Kiev. Should there have been a ceasefire then? Would that have been the right thing to do? Is a ceasefire always the best thing in any war? Well, it depends on what terms. So when Russia was on the point of invading, capturing Kiev, a ceasefire on the terms Russia withdraws completely from Ukraine, and there will be a ceasefire on that basis. Yes, I'm all for it. A ceasefire on the basis that Russia gets to keep all the land, all the territory it's taken over thus far, like half of Ukraine, and let's have a ceasefire. Ceasefire on that basis? No, definitely not. So the current situation in Gaza, I believe, Gaza is a state run by Hamas, and that state has attacked Israel, and Israel is retaliating against it and eliminating a military threat. So my personal view is that is entirely justified and can continue until that mission is accomplished, with all the usual provisos about rules of warfare, civilian casualties, etc. But this is a battle between two states, one of which didn't just invade, but committed appalling atrocities against the other. So I think it's quite right that Israel says, right, we're not having these people remaining in charge in Gaza. We're not having this operation remaining intact. We're going to dismantle it piece by piece by going through the whole country with a fine-tooth comb. As far as I'm concerned, that seems perfectly reasonable. Now, I think a lot of people's views on this matter are influenced by factors other than the issues of the discussion. I think a lot of people feel some sort of natural affinity for the Palestinian people, either through sharing their majority religion or regarding them as having some sort of oppressed status, or regarding them as being the racial minority people or whatever. So there are various factors come into play. The other factor that comes into play as well is, I was going to say bad old-fashioned anti-Semitism as well, which I think is very concerning around the world, or has been for centuries, millennia even, and certainly is today in Britain. And I think a lot of people respond to the issue of Israel-Gaza. They respond to it from a standpoint and assumption of anti-Semitism, which is very concerning indeed. I think another interesting aspect to it is what I was talking about last week with regard to immigration. What sometimes happens with immigration, someone moves to a different country, but their priorities, their political priorities, are actually, their loyalties are elsewhere. Their main loyalties are elsewhere. So how many people are there in Britain whose loyalty to the Palestinian cause is stronger than their loyalty to the nation that they live in? I think there are a lot of people in that category. And I think within a nation, it's not healthy to have, well, in a sense, not healthy to have anyone like that, but there's always going to be some. But to have a large proportion of your population of that view, I think, is very dangerous. And I think that's the direction we're heading in. Right, Bruce has come back already. Well, ceasefire could stop the bombs being dropped on families and 12,000 plus children. Israel has no claim to Gaza. Israel's not claiming to have a claim to Gaza. Israel's not saying Gaza belongs to us, actually, so we're going to invade it and take it over for herself. The civilian casualties, we're relying on Hamas's statistics, which I think it's remarkable the way the media quote them. I mean, do you really think these mass murderers tell the truth when it comes to reporting on casualties? So in the casualty figures, basically, we're fairly in the dark, but there will have been a substantial number of civilian casualties, which is always a tragedy. But that is pretty well an inevitable consequence of warfare, particularly this type of warfare. But the government of Hamas decided to take the action they did, knowing that this would be the response to it. And the response is inevitable, in my view, entirely justified. Again, you could say when let's go back to the Second World War, say. After D-Day, the Allies are advancing across France, into Belgium, into Germany. They're going to defeat the Nazis once and for all. So people could have said, "Oh, we need to stop. There's lots of civilian casualties," which there were. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of civilian casualties during the invasion of Europe and the final defeat of Nazism. Does that mean that the Allies should have stopped? They should have said, no, okay, too many civilian casualties, we're going to stop here. We'll let Hitler stay in power and we'll try and negotiate something with him. Would that have been the right thing to do? Would that have been the moral thing to do? I don't think it would. So again, I don't think there's a general argument that any war should stop at any particular point, because that's automatically the best thing on no matter what terms. Because often there are very weighty moral issues at stake in a war, and bringing a war to an end in a satisfactory manner involves resolving those serious moral issues. So, right, Linda, Prince William, just like his dad, World Economic Forum member, should keep his nose out of politics. Right, I quite agree. In Prince William's defense, I would say this, though. I think he's been slightly misrepresented. The headlines are saying Prince William calls for immediate ceasefire. But if you look at what he said, he called for a ceasefire as soon as possible. I mean, what does that mean? I mean, would anyone argue with that? If you said to the Israelis, "Do you want a ceasefire as soon as possible?" They'd say, "Yes, definitely. As soon as they surrender and give up the hostages, then yes, we could have a ceasefire." Or as soon as Hamas surrender, we can have a ceasefire. So it's the "as soon as possible" is the key phrase, and it's very vague. It's not clear what it means at all. So I think the media, to some degree, they've pounced on it and they've made it sound like he's saying what they want him to say. I think this happens to Pope Francis a little bit as well. Sometimes he'll say something that's maybe not very clear, and he's not the clearest communicator, I don't think. But then they'll grasp it and make it as though he's saying what they want him to say. I know with Pope Francis, that's not always the case, but on some occasions, I think that happens. I think that's what's happened with Prince William as well. The media have presented him as saying a bit more than he actually said. What he said wasn't particularly political, or it did seem to be leaning one way. But I think he should have kept his nose out of it. I mean, this is the classic way to alienate people from the monarchy, isn't it? I mean, I'm not talking family party policy, that personal opinion. I mean, I'd be a very strong monarchist. I think it's a fantastic system, and it's got really huge advantages for the nation. But with Prince Charles, maybe Prince William's going to go the same way. Prince Harry, well, let's not even mention him. If they make it their business to be pushing political causes that I disagree with at every juncture, then how long will it be before people like me, who normally are the greatest supporters of the monarchy, are starting thinking, "Oh, I really can't be bothered." And do they really think, does King Charles and Prince William, do they think by being a bit sort of lefty, trendy PC, that they're going to win people over to the monarchy? I don't think so. They will win people over by keeping their mouths shut, and it's not their greatest talent at the moment. What I would have done if I'd been born as Prince William or King Charles, goodness knows, I couldn't possibly keep my mouth shut. I'd have had to abdicate or something. I don't know. But yes, good point. Good point. Right, Ian. Right, the amount of aid that's been pumped into Gaza, it could be like Dubai if they hadn't spent the money building tunnels and arms. Right, quite correct. The amount of aid that goes to it is absolutely huge, totally disproportionate. Look at all the serious issues around the world, needs around the world. Then I think a hugely disproportionate amount of money goes into Gaza. I mean, it's got its own refugee agency. The rest of the world has one UN refugee agency, and Palestine has another one, has its own one, that has special rules that allow refugee status to be handed down through families. Normally, refugee status, if you're the person who moved, you're a refugee. If you're the next generation, well, no, I mean, you've been born in a new country, then no, you're not a refugee anymore. But with Palestine, that rule doesn't apply, and they allow sort of hereditary refugee status, which I think is the recipe for ongoing bitterness and resentment. And it's not seeking a solution to the problem. That's trying to keep the grievance on the boil, in my view. So, yeah, I mean, if you look on Gaza, normally, what comes to mind when you hear of Gaza, you probably see the dusty streets and a bit of rubble here and there. I mean, have a look on Google Maps. Look at some of the places. There's like a sort of aqua theme park thing, and the seafront's lovely. So I mean, it could be a lot of it. Maybe not so much now, but not too long ago, was actually looking pretty good. Quite attractive place to live, a place to visit. But yes, that's not the direction it seems to be heading in. Okay, let's. I'll come to some of the other questions in a minute. Lots of pro-Palestinian banners with socialist worker banners. Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? I'm sure there's some people who by their front door in Scotland, they've got like an LGBT flag, they've got a Palestine flag, they've got the Socialist Worker Party, they've got a we welcome refugees, they've got a climate justice for everyone. It's like the same. All these things go together as left-wing causes. Right, why should the Palestinian cause be seen as a left-wing cause? A variety of reasons. The main one is that they see it as an oppressed-oppressor situation. So instead of looking which side's right and which side's wrong, they try and look at which side's strong and which side's weak, or which side is the oppressor, which side is the oppressed, and that then determines for them which side they ought to be on. Or if you're the Jeremy Corbyn mindset or the really extreme left mindset, whichever side's Britain on and America, then you have to be on the opposite side. Because Britain and America, they're the capitalist countries, so they're obviously bad. So whoever they're in conflict with or whoever they're supporting must be the baddies. Whoever they're in conflict with or the people they're supporting in conflict with, well, they must be the good people. So it's that sort of logic in the loosest sense, I think, is behind it. Right, let's we'll stay on this subject. Lots of questions coming in. That's good. The thing is, the Allies were fighting a state, but Israel are fighting an area. I would disagree with that. No, Gaza is, okay, it's not a fully fledged state, but it has a government, and it functions as an authority over that terrain. Now, Israel maintains some security role. I'm not exactly sure how that works. Wouldn't you? I mean, imagine, say, I don't know, the Western Isles was some rebel territory, and they were just constantly firing missiles at Inverness, just constantly, every day. What would you do? Just say, oh, well, we'll just put up. No, you're going to do something about it, haven't you? And that's what Israel is doing. Is bombing civilians likely to decrease violent anti-Israel sentiment or not? Now, that's a very good point, Bruce. Now, this is the crux of the problem, isn't it? That you take action that might be justified, just war theory and all that. It's justified, but might the consequence be to radicalize a new generation? So during Israel's attack, there'll be Palestinians who are having appalling experiences, bereavements, horrific experiences. Is that likely to make them more vulnerable to radicalization in the future? Well, yes, it is. But the other side is, overall, can the population become any more radical? Have you ever watched any Palestinian TV children's programs, or just Palestinian TV in general? It is absolutely appalling hate mongering, anti-Semitic hate mongering. It is absolutely sickening to watch. There's some mainstream media in Palestine. So would it make any difference? Yes, it will make. That's the same with any conflict, though, isn't it? To bring a conflict to an end, generally, you want the right side to win. And from then on, you want some sort of reconciliation that enables a sort of stable settlement to be arrived at. Now, why is that so difficult in this case? Partly because the claims to land are irreconcilable. Partly because, I have to say, I mean, let's call the spade a spade. I think for a lot of the Palestinian people, it is a hatred of Israel. and Jews. It's not a territorial dispute. It's a feeling that Jews have got no right to be in what's really Muslim territory. What makes it Muslim territory? Well, Muslims invaded it hundreds of years ago. As far as I'm concerned, that doesn't mark it as Muslim territory forevermore. So I think to a lot of Palestinians and to a lot of Muslims in the Middle East, they just don't want a Jewish state at all, because as far as they're concerned, that's Islamic territory. And the Al-Aqsa Mosque was built on top of the Jewish temple. So that's a real act of triumphalism, isn't it? Like, we've beaten you, we're taken over, we've put our mosque on your most sacred site. Now, in saying that, that's not saying like the uniquely bad thing that Muslims did. There have been plenty of cases where Christians would have done exactly the same thing in history as well. But that is a big part of it as well, that they want the Al-Aqsa Mosque is a symbol of like Islamic domination over Judaism. And that a lot of Muslims don't like the fact that Jews have now got their own state within the Middle East. So that's an extremely difficult problem to solve. And ultimately that needs to be solved by reconciliation and argument in the best sense of the word. So very difficult. Yes, I'll give that an upvote as well. Okay. Yes, I mean, absolutely. Queen Elizabeth II just never said anything about anything. Sometimes the media would try and take the tiniest slither of a comment they thought might possibly lean in one direction or another and try and make a headline out of it. But it was slim pickings for them, wasn't it? Whereas Charles, I mean, he's for decades has been saying things that generally I disagree with, which is not a good idea. If you're wanting to be the figure who unites the nation. Right, I'm just going back to see there are a few. Right, John asking about the meeting cancellations. I'll talk about those in a minute. Right, let's see. Go ahead. If you think Palestine is radicalized, what do you think of Israel? Right, that's an interesting question. Well, yeah, is Israel radicalized? Well, to a degree. I mean, basically, if you've got a nation that's invaded by the 6 surrounding nations the day after it comes into existence, and you've had to fight against basically mass hostility on every border from people who basically don't want to wipe your state out, but they haven't quite managed it, but they keep trying. And there's still attacks. And if they were strong enough, I think it's pretty obvious that if Israel had been weak, Israel wouldn't exist anymore. It would have been wiped off the map by the surrounding nations. Israel's existence is a result of its military strength. Right, so what does that do to the mindset of a nation? Does it radicalize them? Does it harden them? Yes, it does. Is it likely to result in them acting badly in particular situations or being harsh? Yes, it is. Yeah, and that's not to be excused, but that's something that's going to happen. But also saying conflict as well, it's inevitable when there's large groups of soldiers involved that there are going to be basically atrocities are going to take place. There's going to be situations where some people surrender and they get shot in any case. I mean, this sort of thing, because it's not possible to maintain perfect discipline across huge fighting forces, unfortunately. So that is another unfortunate aspect, inevitable aspect, I think, of war. Now, Bruce, your keyboard will be on fire soon. Israel's radicalization is explainable because it's encircled by its enemies. Do you think Gaza's radicalization is a result of anti-Semitism and the Al-Aqsa Mosque? I think it's partly a result of that. Yeah, I think it's also partly the result that some people, have had to move. Not in this generation, generations ago, have had to move. But there have been lots of situations in history where large groups of people have moved, and then, they settle in, and it's okay. So I think there is something different in this case, rather than just a territorial dispute or people being displaced, many, many decades ago. I think there is more to it than that. Right, that was an interesting start on that topic. We got off to a good start. Right, let's have a talk about a few other issues. Greece passed same-sex marriage legislation this week. And the BBC reported it, of course, in their usual balanced and fair style, I'm sure you can imagine. When you're watching the BBC, if you do watch the BBC, right, do I recommend you watch the BBC? I do, actually. I think it's good to see what most people are consuming, and it's interesting to see their perspective and assess it. I think it's quite an important part of understanding what's going on in the nation, is seeing what's going on on the BBC. So they reported on same-sex marriage being passed in Greece. So who do they speak to? They speak to some gay couples. Now those interviews, it's in their house over a cup of tea. How are you doing today? Some shots of them looking like normal smiley people, and then they give their opinion. Then it goes to the people opposing it. Where do they find those people? They find them at a protest. Now, if you go to a protest, interview lots of people. I mean, if you interview enough people at a big event, you'll find some people who maybe don't come over brilliantly, or maybe, I mean, let's be blunt. There's a fair chance you might find someone who's, got some sort of mental health issue, not quite entirely with it. Then, you can get some quotes from them, and then you can just use those quotes. People don't know that that's a person maybe struggling with some issues themselves, and the BBC can present its entirely skewed picture. So when you're watching the BBC, look out for that. I mean, I guarantee I will never be on the BBC in a sort of pleasant sitting on my sofa at home, talking about what I've been doing today, and then let's go into just explaining a little bit about what I believe. You'll never get that. It's interesting with the family party and with myself, when there's a newspaper article and they want a picture of me, I mean, there's lots of, relatively speaking, decent pictures of me online, but they'll often take one that's like out of focus and it's the distance and a bit of a bad picture. It's trying to present, you're a bit of a shadowy figure. Whereas if you're on their side, they'll come and take a really good smiley face picture of you. Nice, colourful picture. I mean, it really is remarkable the way they operate. Right, Howard. Right, Bruce, let's come back to this. So Israel's radically... Oh, no, we've had that one, haven't we? Okay, well done there. The hereditary refugees is interesting. Yep. They haven't got a TV license. Yeah, I haven't either, actually. I don't have a TV license. What I was talking about there, BBC coverage, was online. And what am I talking about? I have got a TV license. I was talking about BBC coverage online. I don't watch television. I do have a television license because I want to watch things other than the BBC. And the rule in Britain is that if you want to watch something other than the BBC, you have to pay for the BBC. And as I always say, the analogy would be if you went to another country, you went into a newsagent's and said, I'd like a copy of this newspaper, please. And the newsagent said, well, you can buy that newspaper, but you have to spend £2 on the government's newspaper first. Once you've bought the government's newspaper for £2, you're then allowed to buy another newspaper. Now, if that was going on in a country you went to, you'd think, what is going on here? What sort of tyrannical, despotic regime have I come to here? They make you buy the government's newspaper before you can buy another. And yet that's exactly how the BBC works with regard to TV in Britain. So I would recommend watching it. I think it is interesting to see what's happening. BBC Doctors programme 4 days a week, wall-to-wall homosexual, lesbian, transgender, and almost every episode, thank goodness, has been scrapped. Yeah, that's the Doctors programme, not the whole BBC, I assume. But yeah, it is remarkable. I mean, the news is biased, but the rest of the output is worse. It's the drama, it's the children's programmes that I think are the most sinister. Because the writers have just got carte blanche to use their medium as a way of promoting a particular political agenda. Talking of which, here's another one that the BBC are warming up on, and that's the decriminalisation of abortion. So what that amounts to, the important thing, it amounts to the removal of time limits. There are no time limits at all, or abortion up to full term on demand. That's what that would result in, which is absolutely horrific, a really appalling thing to contemplate. And the BBC's pushing it. They had an article, I think it was today, about how unfair it is that some women get accused of having illegal abortions. Sometimes there's a woman who wanted to have an abortion, but then say past the time limit, and then the baby, the unborn child, died, and the hospital are a bit suspicious about what's happened here. They think, has she had a DIY abortion of some form or another. So I would imagine most of these cases, the investigation is perfectly reasonable. Obviously, the investigation should be swift and accurate and whatever. But the BBC are gearing up for a campaign for decriminalisation of abortion. So watch this space, because it's been Green Party policy for a few years. And you know what well, that means in Scotland, don't you? If it's been Green Party policy for 5 years, no, when it's been Green Party policy for about 2 years, the Lib Dems adopt it. Once the Lib Dems have adopted, Labour and SNP have normally adopted it, within a year after them. Once they've all adopted it, it will pass, and then the Conservatives will accept it, about a couple of years after them. And then everyone forgets about it. You just wait for the next thing to come along. Don't want to pay for propaganda. Yeah, quite understandable. A lot of the BBC does justify that description. Indeed. Right, I'll talk about Prince William a little bit already. I was going to mention King Charles and his cancer diagnosis. Now, that was when that news broke. Now, some of you might have heard of the Heritage Party in Britain. They've got a few people in Scotland as well. So the Heritage Party, in some ways, it's a bit like the Family Party, but in other ways, it very definitely isn't. Now, the leader of the Heritage Party is David Curtin, who's, I don't know if black's the right description, anyway, so minority ethnic as well. I've chatted to him a couple of times on the phone. Very nice chap. So he leads the Heritage Party. When King Charles's cancer diagnosis was announced, David Curtin, almost immediately, the next day, tweeted an article that was saying he hasn't really got cancer. It's really part of a big cover-up. It's the, it's the people who are really in control want to pretend he's got cancer. It's all part of it. It's all part of the grand plan. And if you believe you've got cancer, then you've been a bit naive and stupid. I thought, dear, oh dear, dear. Some people seem to get in the mindset that just nothing can be the way it seems. There's always got to be another explanation rather than the glaringly obvious and uncontroversial one. So I thought that was quite an insight. So I said, what's the difference between the Family Party and the Heritage Party? Well, the Scottish Family Party doesn't entertain things like that. It's also pretty grossly insensitive, isn't it? I mean, if you've really got good reason to suggest that, then present the evidence. But just to have wild speculation, someone announces, what could potentially be a serious health diagnosis, and immediately just come in with, no, I don't believe you. No, come on. Anyway, so that's a bit of a difference before us. Right, let's have a look. Yes, one or two. Yeah, one or two. I think when it comes to an issue like that, though, if you've got people who are, say, Prince Charles hasn't really got cancer, I think that's sort of too embarrassing for us. So if someone goes to a family party meeting, comes to see what we're all about and has a chat to people, I don't want them to be hearing someone saying, I don't think Prince Charles has really got cancer. Because that makes people who come to the meetings think, wow, what is going on here? These are unusual people I've come to meet. And we don't want that. We don't want that. So we're not interested in sort of having people who want to peddle those sort of views here. Do you respect any aspect of Hitler and his reign? Now, that's a funny question, isn't it? Because the general assumption is, well, I think for a lot of people, their definition of evil is like Hitler. So to show that someone's evil, you've got to show that they're like Hitler in some ways, which is actually not a very good moral standard to apply. What you need to do is have a moral standard and then judge everyone by it, including Hitler. Now, I'm sure there'll be some aspects of Hitler's policies, the way he ran various aspects of Germany, that might be quite effective, but I wouldn't really want to express approval of those policies as Hitler's policies. So let's say you had a policy for, let's say road building, like he built the autobahns, which is generally regarded that was a positive thing that he did. But I'd be reluctant to go around saying, oh yeah, Hitler had the right idea about autobahns. Because already you can imagine what I just said there. Someone could get it and edit it down to Hitler had the right idea. Oh, I've just said it again. So you see what I mean? So I wouldn't really want to talk about any positive aspects of Hitler's leadership for that reason, because overwhelmingly is obviously remembered as an exceptionally evil person who did a massive amount of harm. Based on facts, yes, yeah, we want policies that are based on evidence. I mean, we've got a variety of views on a lot of issues within the family party, but we need to draw the line somewhere. That's a good example. Yeah, so someone could say, Hitler turned around the German economy. And so, yeah, well, maybe he did, but it doesn't stop him being an exceptionally evil character. Right. Next little thing to talk about. I'll just talk about the Heritage Party, the Reform Party. I don't talk about them very much. So sometimes people say, is the family party a bit like the Reform Party? Well, the answer is sort of no, because they're not socially conservative. They're not pro-life. They're not pro-marriage. They're not against assisted suicide, etc., 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 etc. They're more maybe sort of conventionally right-wing and maybe culturally conservative, but they're not socially conservative. And I just happened to see something about one of their policies the other day. I thought you might be quite interested to hear about this. It was their policy for dealing with the NHS waiting lists. And a very important part of their policy was to abolish the basic rate of tax for NHS and social care staff as well. Abolish the basic rate of tax. Now, if you've got people working for the government pays them and then takes some of the money back. It's sort of a bit of a charade. So if you give them a tax break, what you're effectively doing is giving them a whopping big pay rise. So their policy is to give all NHS staff who deal with patients a pretty big pay rise as a means of dealing with the waiting list. Now, is that a good strategy? I mean, for a start, doctors in the UK apparently are the second highest paid in the world. So why a substantial pay rise is needed there, I'm not entirely sure. Then I also think, in what way is that policy targeted towards solving the problem of waiting lists? I don't really see that. They're saying it will help staff retention. But surely the return on your expenditure is going to be very poor by this just sort of scattergun giving everyone a pay rise rather than focusing the resources precisely where they're needed. So if you've got a GP, say, so you're going to give them a big pay rise, how's that going to help cut waiting lists? Not sure it is. So I think it's grossly inefficient, and it seems to be very much a populist policy in the most straightforward sense of the word, and it's appealing to the millions and millions of NHS staff in the UK and offering them a big pay rise, which tends to be a vote winner with people. So yeah, I wasn't very impressed with that policy. How are they going to pay for it? I wasn't impressed with this bit either. They've got some scheme, I won't claim to understand it, where they're going to restructure some debt and do this and get the Bank of England to do that. In other words, it seemed like a scheme to just make money out of nothing. Now, I think if we've learned anything on financial markets with government finance over recent decades, is that you can't make money out of nothing. There's no shortcut that gets you around the basic facts. If you borrow money, you have to pay interest on it. You eventually have to pay it back, etc. But Reform's policy, it was as though they've struck an idea, which means you can just get money for nothing and give all the NHS staff a massive pay rise, and that's going to help the NHS. I'm not convinced at all. NHS needs to be streamlined. Yes, I'm no expert in the NHS, so I'm reluctant to wade in too deeply, but I would imagine that there are substantial efficiencies that could be efficiency savings that could be enacted. I suspect. We shall see. 12 million foreign born in the country, and the NHS is massively short of staff. It is short of staff, partly, yeah. Britain's population has increased very, very dramatically, and public services are strained, and that's more in England than in Scotland, but it's the case to a smaller extent in Scotland. Of course, the NHS is a massive recruiter of foreign workers as well. I was talking about this last week, wasn't I? So the NHS recruits doctors from other countries, including poor countries, which I think has got very serious ethical questions attached to it. Right. ULEZ fines will pay for it. Yeah, they wish. They wish. Yeah, NHS needs some serious efficiency improvements. Sure, there's loads we could do. Yeah, I think when you've got these huge organizations, it's almost inevitable that there's going to be areas where improvements can be made. I mean, I've heard stories about NHS procurement, where there's a sort of cozy relationship between the person who does the ordering and the company that takes the orders. And they're paying way over the odds for quite basic items. For example, I mean, hear those things. Yeah, I'm sure there are issues that could be addressed. Now, with the NHS, I really like the idea of the NHS. For a nation to have a collective healthcare system, just seems right. I mean, of all the things a nation can do, that seems one of the most obvious and best things to do, doesn't it? But then it's interesting looking around the world. Why is it not being copied by any other country in Europe, for example? So part of me is open to the idea that maybe the system in other countries of Europe might work better for various reasons, but I don't know. It'd have to be a pretty strong argument. I do like the idea of say a universal collective healthcare system. Right, that's a good question, Alejandro. Right, do I sympathise with the Blade Runners who break ULEZ cameras in London? No, I would say. I sympathise with their cause, but not with their action. Because if we concede the point that basically destroying government property is an acceptable way to protest against something, then I think that's a pretty big point to concede. So no, I think if they were going to put hoods over them or spray paint over them that could be cleaned off or whatever, or more straightforwardly, it's a political issue, so deal with it the way any other political issue is dealt with. So I don't approve of that sort of action. I know what's his name, Lawrence Fox, has made a big thing of this. He's basically said, yes, go out and commit a crime, vandalize council property or whatever. And then he complains when the police come along and say you're inciting people to commit a crime. And then he plays the victim. So, freedom of speech, it's the thought police coming to get me. So I think if anyone's going to suggest that they think that sort of destruction of a property is an acceptable way forward, then I think they need to think again. That's a good point. Back to the NHS. A lot of resources being wasted basically on transgender so-called treatments. The family party policy is to end those completely on the NHS, so they've been honest. In the grand scheme of things, that's only a tiny proportion of total NHS spending, but it would help. It would help. Yes, diversity inclusion managers in the NHS and everywhere else as well. I mean, just the thoughts that people can think, right, we've got the NHS very stretched. These are the things we can spend our money on. Let's allocate a few £100,000 to diversity and inclusion managers. It's a difficult mindset to relate to, I find, but they would all be seeking alternative useful employment if the Scottish Family Party were in charge. All right, we've got to hear large delays for people with genuine health issues. Right, mental health's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, mental health is what's the word? I will choose my words carefully here. The trend is for more and more things to be classified as mental health, and I include that in terms of the medical profession. I think the range of conditions that are diagnosed as mental health cases has mushroomed. I think within everyday discourse as well, within the media, the range of things that are talked about as mental health conditions has expanded to cover virtually every aspect of life, and just in general conversation in the populace again, but people routinely talk about what would previously have been called, I was a bit sad, a bit stressed, a bit fed up, whatever. It will now be expressed in mental health language. Are there any benefits to that? Well, it might help some people to respond to it in a more helpful way. I suppose the danger of it is if people see it as a health condition, then they're seeing it maybe as more outside their control. So personally, I would be generally, I would advise people, myself, I would advise against being too willing to use mental health language to describe our emotional lives. I don't think it is beneficial. Because I think if we say, I'm feeling a bit fed up today, but if you say, my mental health's not too good, you're sort of dramatizing it. You're making it into a bigger deal, and you're expecting people to see you as the victim of an illness. Someone suffering from an illness is not your fault. So it moves the emphasis away from, come on, then, get over it and get on with it, to, okay, how can we support you? Let's focus on the problem. Now, of course, some people are saying to them, right, come on, pull yourself together, get on with it, cheer up. What's the matter with you? Come on, it's not such a big deal. For some people, that is entirely appropriate and the most helpful thing to say. In other circumstances, it is not. But I think the balance in our society and in our schools in particular is people are becoming too unwilling to deliver those sort of self-help messages, shall we say. So, right, good point. Right, abortion costs must be, a significant portion as well. IVF, fertility treatments must be, you don't have to pay for some of them, but it must be a considerable expense. The Scottish government, of course, wants to eliminate the gay tax, as they call it. The gay tax is charged when two men or two women want to have a child and they haven't got the requisite ingredients. Therefore, there's sometimes they have to pay a charge to get them, to get some sperm or an egg or whatever. And they refer to this as the gay tax, with the obvious implication that it's some unfair discrimination against gay people, which is totally mad. And that's at the opposite end of the spectrum from the Scottish Family Party's policy. But that's the case with lots of things about the Scottish government. Right, let's have right, next little issue. Channel 4. A few years ago, I made I made a video called Channel 4 is Sex Mad. And I took little clips from there, showed naked attraction, and there were ones where they were having like couples bringing another sexual partner into the relationship, just one after another. Sex education in schools. I mean, anything on Channel 4. Channel 4 always generally has a program in production or being shown that's about sex, and always it's attacking traditional sexual morality, always. And its latest one is like filming people, like matching them up somehow to lose their virginity, maybe not quite on screen, but and then be interviewed straight after or whatever. I mean, really appalling gutter level stuff. And you always have to remind yourself when you see or hear about that, hopefully you won't see it, but you hear about it, is who's in charge of Channel 4? Channel 4, of course, is a government agency. It's an agency of the British government. And who is the British government? Well, it's the Conservatives. So after how many years are we? 13, 14 years of Conservative government, then we've got Channel 4 pumping out this sort of thing. And they've done it for decades. And the Conservative Party has never gone to Channel 4 and said, you are not doing this. You are not producing basically gutter pornographic filth like this, corrupting the morals of the nation as a government agency. They've never done it, and they never will, because they're the Conservative Party. And you might get a handful of people who will think, oh well, that's not quite right what Channel 4 are doing, but the vast majority just we don't care, whatever, just carry on, it's all fine by us. Okay, let's go on our little trip to Orkney and Thurso. Tell you a few things about that. Quite an eventful trip. And the last time we went to Orkney and Thurso, it was last January 2023. And it's the most cancellations we've ever had. One event in Kirkwall, the same event was cancelled 3 times. We booked in a hotel, booked a function room in the hotel. And then on the morning of the event, they've phoned up the organizer and said, we've got a terrible flood in the room. So we went to have a look. You couldn't actually see any water, but they had to cancel because of a terrible flood. So we got a function room in another hotel, and we turned up there at the allotted time, and they said, we've had a mix-up with the diary. We've had a calendar mistake, so we've double booked. Sorry, you can't use it. Who is using it? Oh, don't know. Can we see who's using it? No. So I said, okay, we can just meet in your bar then. We're only going to be, 10 people. I don't know. We can just get around a big table in your bar and we can have a chat there. And they said, no, you can't do that. I said, why is that? So we're short staffed tonight. We can't fit you in. There's the bar with half full of people, as usual. They said they couldn't fit us in. So anyway, so that was. Then we went to Thurso last year, and the hotel in Thurso again cancelled on the morning we were supposed to have the meeting. So we got there this time. We found a cancel-proof hotel in Kirkwall. So that was great. The meeting went ahead. They said they had a phone call and an email or something, but they just ignored it. Why can't all the other places do that? Why can't they just think, okay, one stroppy person's trying to get their own way? Could they disagree with a political party? Bad luck, we're going ahead. Why are the others so weak and feeble and pathetic? I don't know. Anyway, so we had the meeting there, but we had a welcome committee outside the hotel, a little protest. There's about 6 people with rainbow flags, etc. And they made some placards, some homemade placards. One of them said something about fascists. So I said to them, can you justify that? Can you provide any sort of explanation why you think we're fascists? Because to be honest, you're just embarrassing yourself saying such ridiculous things. And they all just stood there and couldn't say anything. Then they got another one saying that we discriminate against immigrants. And I was with Neil Deepnarine at the time, who was an immigrant. So I said to Neil, how do you discriminate against yourself? How are you intolerant of yourself? I mean, do you hurl insults at yourself in the street? Do you beat yourself up sometimes or what? So that was quite a tricky one for them. They also said that we're intolerant of disabled people. So I just said to them, how dare you? How dare you just make up things completely out of thin air and then stand there in the street with it written on a placard? I said, where on earth did you get that from? Didn't know. No answer at all. They're quite big on the smacking ban. So do you think you should smack children? Well, I said, well, family party isn't, we're not here to tell parents how to bring the kids up, but we do oppose the smacking ban and we would repeal it. They're saying, oh, that's why you're fascist then. I said, oh, there's no smacking ban in England. Does that mean they're all fascists in England? Anyway, right, enough of our welcome committee. We had a great meeting. It was interesting hearing people's take. A couple of local people there were saying they think the vast majority of people in Orkney, they don't agree with the Lib Dems policies. It's a Lib Dem MSP, Liam MacArthur, local boy, popular, nice guy, played in the football team. So you got about 60% of the vote last time. And people were saying, I think probably about 80% of the people in Orkney, they don't agree with him or with the Lib Dems about all that transgender extremism, decriminalization of abortion, assisted suicide. I mean, Liam MacArthur is the MSP leading the assisted suicide bill in the Scottish Parliament. He said that's not what people believe here. But he's saying when Liam MacArthur comes to Orkney, he doesn't stop people in the street and say, hello, I'm Liam. Just to reassure you, I'm really pushing the transgender ideology in schools. He doesn't say that. When he's on his home patch, he's all ferries and roads and getting schools repaired and roads fixed or whatever. That's what he talks about there. Then he goes to the Parliament and he's all about doctors giving poison to their patients. So we were saying in the meeting, we need to open people's eyes to not so much who they're voting for what policies they're voting for when they're voting for the Lib Dems in the Western Isles. We also went to Stronsay, which is a little island with 350 people on it. So we went over to there. We were invited by a resident on Stronsay. He said, come over, have a meeting. I can get some people together. And we did. We had a living room full of people. I think 9 Stronsay natives came along, which is 2.6% of the population. Was that be about 10,000 people if it was in Edinburgh? I don't know. So we had the meeting. We had to have the meeting in someone's living room. That was really good. Lots of interesting people. Good questions, as it was in Kirkwall as well. A really good, positive meeting. Yeah, but the local community association took a vote and said we cancel the booking. Now, I think if you don't want to take a political party, when they make a booking, it's your job to check. So if you want to check them out, then do it at the time that we inquire. And if they don't like what we stand for, then say, no, you can't have the booking. Fine. What you can't do is take the booking, then just wait until one or two angry activists get in touch with you, probably tell them a pack of lies, and then say, okay, we'll cancel it at the very last minute. The letter from the community association, or an email sent to our organizer on Stronzy, it had a quite remarkable line in it. The community association said that they were happy for the event to take place somewhere else. It could go ahead in a different venue. I thought, hang on a minute, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Do you think you've really got the power to declare which political parties can have a meeting on your island? Really? Well, maybe that. I'm glad Stronzy Community Council are not running the whole country, because that was quite an authoritarian view from them. Now, another interesting thing, I've had some opposition on Facebook as well. I'll just share with you the highlight from that. Listen to this. Someone quoted one of our policies, and they actually got it right for once. So this is what they quoted. Schools should instill a proper respect for authority, expecting obedience, courtesy, and good manners. I'll just read that again for you. Schools should instill a proper respect for authority, expecting obedience, courtesy, and good manners. And someone responded to that saying, I am a teacher, and that is frightening. How about that then? I mean, if you want a bit of an insight into why things are not so good in many Scottish schools, that's it. A teacher finding the idea of respect for authority, obedience, courtesy, and good manners, a teacher finds those ideas frightening. I mean, where'd you start with that one? I mean, I thought that was a pretty powerful illustration of where we are in Scottish education. Right, one last thing to look at while we're on the education front. There has been a few articles about indiscipline in schools, violence against teachers, as there often are. I mean, these articles come up. I mean, every few weeks there's one of them. So how's this? This is from the Herald. Some teachers are ending up in hospital with broken bones due to increasing levels of violence they face at work, a union leader has said. Okay. Assistant Secretary of the Education Institute of Scotland said teachers are also ending up with post-traumatic stress disorder due to violent incidents. The EIS is calling for the City Council to take action. Okay, what action do they want taken, I wonder? In November, a report from the union warned pupil violence had increased over the last 4 years, and 82.7% of schools were reporting violent or aggressive incidents each week. Right, Mr. Besley told the BBC, we deal with teachers who've been assaulted and go to hospital with broken bones, and that's without, of course, the post-traumatic stress disorder, right, etc. Right, next one. He said there's a need to accept that behaviours got worse, with a number of factors potentially contributing to it. Right, what factors have contributed to the epidemic of violence in Scottish schools, including towards teachers? Could it be that the schools are trying to abolish punishments? Could it be that instead of punishments, they just think you have to have a nice chat with people and make friends again, and that makes it all okay? And the pupils just think that was a joke, I got away with it. Could that be a factor? Could it be that they're always talking about children's rights and saying basically no one's got a right to tell you what to do? Might that be a factor in it? Well, let's see what they think the factors are. The factors are staff shortages, the influence of social media, and the impact of the pandemic. I mean, how blind can you get? I mean, all at best, they're tangential influences at best. I mean, reading that, I was expecting to say climate change at the end. It's just basically they're blaming the things that that they're concerned about as the Educational Institute of Scotland. One of the teachers told the BBC, said she's scared in my workplace. Another said an incident had left her with concussion. Aberdeen City Council Education Convener Martin Gregg said feedback from staff would be considered. How about that then? So my feedback is, I got a fractured skull when a pupil attacked me. Thank you for your feedback. We'll give consideration to that. No, find who did that and expel them immediately, and then let's take it from there, see what the police can do about it. How about that? No, they welcome the feedback. He told the BBC, everyone who visits and uses a school environment is entitled to expect a place to be safe, peaceful, respectful environment. That's a classic case of, we're giving you an entitlement. You've got a right to be in a school where you don't get your bones broken by the pupils. That's your right. I think most teachers would say they're not really bothered about the right to not be attacked. What they're really bothered about is not being attacked. Okay, it's quite a big difference, isn't it? But no, he said that they're entitled, is granted an entitlement to teachers in Aberdeen, but no idea how it's going to be implemented, how it's going to be brought about. It's just by divine fiat, he's declared this entitlement to teachers. So many complaints that come through need to be addressed in the interests, especially of the young people, but also of staff, families, and anyone involved in the life of the school. So it's especially the interest of the young people. So, boys kicked member of staff, broken ribs. When we're responding to that, we're especially concerned with the interest of the young person. To be honest, I'm not in the first instance. I'm concerned about the interest of the teachers who are getting attacked. That's the first priority. And you do whatever it takes to stop that from happening. Right. Once you've done whatever it takes to stop that from happening, I mean, let's not have the bar so low either. I mean, sort of verbal abuse as well. Then once you've stopped that happening, you then turn your attention to the best interest of the young person, of how you're going to change that person and what measures are necessary to change the direction of their life before they end up in prison. And again, I think pretty drastic measures will be justified if they're going to be effective. So he added, the man from Aberdeen Council added, behaviour in schools is monitored. We count up how many teachers get bones broken. We count up how many teachers get punched. We keep a record of how many teachers are subjected to appalling verbal abuse. We're doing our job. There are policies and procedures to make sure staff are as safe as possible. I mean, what a ridiculous thing to say. They obviously don't work, do they? I mean, it's just bizarre. I mean, what a complacent, useless answer to that. So you're saying, right, this is what's happening in your schools. Isn't it appalling? And they're saying, no, we've got policies to make sure that doesn't happen. Well, they're obviously the wrong policies, aren't they? How about reconsidering them? How about going back to square one, having a total rethink of your approach? No, don't think so. There's always more you can do, and we're absolutely keen to do whatever is necessary to ensure that the environment feels safe for all, for staff, for parents and carers, and especially for the young people. Well, I think a lot of the problem is that some of the young people feel too safe. They feel that they can do whatever they like and they're safe. Nothing's going to happen. There's nothing to be frightened of, nothing to fear whatsoever. Give your teacher a good punch and, so what? Nothing's going to happen. Nothing to fear. You'll be back in school within a few days and you'll be the hero of your peers because you're the one who thumped Mrs. So-and-so. Yet another one of these articles. Say these articles come out with depressing, monotonous regularity, and the Scottish Family Party would fix it. We would fix it. There would be huge conflict because the whole ethos of the teaching profession has been corrupted. I mean, there's a huge number of teachers who can see what the problem is, a massive, massive number. But generally, the further you go up the leadership structure into the council, into the government, then there's less common it will be to find a common sense, effective approach to these issues. So the Family Party, we would fix it. Right, let's have a look at a few questions, comments, etc. The Leroy, yes, it was great to be up there. Leroy, Mr. Brown is there he is on Facebook, is our Orkney chairman who organised the event, or someone else organised the event on Stronsay. Leroy was there. It was great to meet him. So yeah, good. We're looking forward to being back. Maybe the Orkney show again in the summer. We're going to maybe have an online meeting soon. Right. Children love good discipline. They resent trendy liberal teachers. Yes, I think that tends to be the case. There's some research by the General Teaching Council of Scotland years ago and they asked pupils about what they thought of their teachers. And some of them said, you know, our teachers let some of the pupils get away with things, and we think that's wrong. Sometimes, you know, they should be punished. And the General Teaching Council of Scotland, 99 times out of 100, whatever the children say, that's the gospel. Or that's thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. But on this point, it was, oh no, we need to educate the children so they realize, you know, the way we deal with things is the right way. Okay, we need to teach them that pupils shouldn't actually be punished when they do things wrong. So, yep. Right, removal of God and moral terrible effect, sexualization of children. Yep, the religious aspect, we don't particularly focus on that explicitly as a family party. I could talk about that at some length. In fact, we're over time. Remind me next week. Remember, I did some research in the school where I worked with some very interesting findings. In fact, what I'll do. Right, I've got my dissertation off the shelf here. I'll talk about some of the findings next week in this regard. It's very, very interesting. Well, I thought it was interesting in any case. The school didn't take any interest in it at all. But anyway, I'll talk about that next week. That would be good. Yeah, I mean, home education is increasing exponentially in Scotland. I'm hearing so many people talking about how they're considering that or actually doing that. Yep, I mean, horror stories from schools, you just hear them all the time. Yeah, I quite like just doing this as well. See, when there's a guest, I interact a lot less with the comments. Maybe we should do 2 live streams a week, one with a guest and one just having a chat. Yeah, I think it's a really serious, because with education, it's the teacher training colleges, it's the unions, it's the General Teaching Council of Scotland, it's Education Scotland, it's the schools themselves, it's the council education departments, it's the education department of the government. Just this whole vast array of people who swap jobs with each other every now and again, and they all think the same. They've got no capacity whatsoever to change direction. So if you point out that something's bad, all they can say to each other is, okay, we obviously haven't gone far enough in the direction we're going. Let's push even further and hope for the best. And that's all they can do. My friends told me the school had been restraining his son with Tourette's daily and hiding it from them. Restraint in primary school is only allowed in certain extreme circumstances. It's pretty close to not allowed at all to restrain people. I think if they're actually like charging at another people with a knife, you'd maybe get away with restraining them. But if they're like trashing the classroom and destroying your educational resources systematically, you can't grab a 5-year-old by the arm and pull him away and say you're not going to do that. That's another story. There's a development in the pipeline in the Parliament about that. Since primary school head teacher reported that indiscipline is here because we have too many leaders. Yeah, well, yeah, add that to the list of wrong explanations. Okay, we will leave it there because it is 10:05. Time has flown by especially quickly tonight. I've enjoyed your comments. Thanks for your comments and interaction. And do join us next week. I forgot to say at the beginning, actually, we're going to start our candidate training course online again before too long. So if you're interested in being a Scottish Family Party candidate in the general election in your local area, drop an email to, just go for admin@scottishfamily.org, admin@scottishfamily.org. We'd love to hear from you. Do the training, then you can find out what it involves before you make a decision, and we can get to know you as well. So do consider that. Right, thanks everyone, and see you next week.